Next up, we have the first of several fireside chats. This one, we're going to kick it off with a bang. So we have with us here today Max Azarov. He is the CEO and co-founder at Novakid. Max is an evangelist for bilingualism, and Novakid is doing amazing. So they just closed a $35 million Series B financing round led by Wauters and Goodwater Capital. And this is just the beginning of their unicorn story, but I'm not going to steal all the thunder. So we have a moderator for this fireside chat, Robin Wauters, the founding editor of Tech.eu. So Robin, if you are here, I will give the floor to you and you can take it away. And I'm looking forward to the discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mary. And I hope everyone can see and hear me right now. Delighted to have the opportunity to do a fireside chat with Max. So really looking forward to the next 40 minutes, I would say. Really good stuff also from Alex. So I'm sure that he will get a lot of questions to answer in the chat. Also ask questions in the chat for this fireside chat. I'll look in the margin of my screen from time to time just to see if there's anything that I also would love to know from Max. While we wait for Max to join us, a little bit of an introduction. My name is Wauters. As mentioned, I'm the founding editor of a website called Tech.eu. We basically cover the European innovation ecosystems with a news website, podcast interviews, newsletter, market research, and so on and so on. But my favorite thing in the world is talking to people and meeting them in person. Unfortunately, we cannot meet in person in Budapest now. It's a real shame. So I'm equally delighted to have a chance to do this chat, but also quite sad that it can't be done in person. And in the meantime, we've been joined by Max. So welcome, Max.
Hi, everyone. Glad to be here.
How are you doing? Where are you tuning in from?
I'm tuning in from Moscow suburbs, from Russia.
From Russia. Well, I'm tuning in from Paris. I'm actually attending an in-person event tomorrow, but I came early, so I'm doing this from a friend's apartment. So hopefully the connection stays up very well. Max, you've already had sort of an introduction from Mary, but if you can sort of give us the elevator pitch of who you are and what you do with Novakid, that would be fantastic.
Sure. So we're basically building, I would say, the best English learning school for kids in Europe and hopefully worldwide pretty soon. So we're already the biggest, the #1 school in Europe, and trying to basically become the go-to solution, the beloved brand for English learning. We're focusing on essentially making sure that all the kids in the 21st century can talk to each other freely, can work in international companies, can choose, can visit places, and again feel comfortable by expressing themselves. So really, I think that's going to be a big driver for prosperity for all of us in the future.
Let's hope so. Big lofty goals, but maybe take us back to the beginning of the company. Why did you feel the need that, was there a gap in the market that you spotted? Was it a personal experience? Was it just research that you were doing to do any kind of startup and you just landed on this? What's the backstory here?
Yeah, definitely. It's a combination of personal need, because I'm also, as was mentioned before, kind of an enthusiast of bilingualism, and we speak 2 languages to our kids at home. So my wife speaks Russian, I speak English. So as a result, we see firsthand how effective it is and how easy it is for kids to actually pick up multiple languages at once. So that was the initial impulse that kind of got me thinking to, what can I do to make this kind of experience available to more kids, right? Because there's only so many kids I can make bilingual, and there's millions more who could definitely benefit from that. And at some point we saw that there was very successful solutions in China that were already kind of pioneering and going ahead of their time, so to speak. And there was nothing similar in Europe or in other countries outside of China. And this was the opportunity that we jumped on.
Fantastic. I can't call myself an expert in the language learning space. What I do know from talking to a lot of entrepreneurs in this space over the last few years, is that it's an extremely competitive space. It seems to me that there is lots of language learning tools from different perspectives. Some use gamification, some focus on adults or a specific niche or a specific subgroup of people or subculture. What differentiates you? Obviously, it's children, but what else would you say makes you stand out in this market?
Yeah, it's actually a very wide held misconception that it's a crowded space. Yes, it's a crowded space, but it's also a huge market with lots of different audiences and niches that need serving. And in our case, we're targeting kids that are not quite preschool kids, so a little bit older. We're starting from 4 years old and up. But not quite the kind of graduating, going to university type of kids, right? So we usually go up to 12, sometimes up to 14 years old, but not older than that. So this is something that I would call as a foundational learning. So we don't help kids to, prepare for the university. This is not what we do. At the same time, we don't help them to prepare for school, right? Because most of our kids already go to school. So what we do is we create this kind of foundational, we provide foundational learning for English for our kids. And this is the niche that we found. I would not say there's a whole lot of players in this niche, at least, I would say the big players, right, who have a significant scale. There's definitely a lot of players offline who provide this type of service. It's extremely fragmented. So in each country, there's probably, at least tens of different language learning schools that are offering that have offerings offline. But online, this was the space that was relatively blue ocean. And I believe that that's part of the reason why we're able to grow so successfully is by picking the right segment and focusing on the right underserved customers. But, if you look at a little bit to the left and to the right, on the left, you have preschool kids who are really small. And for them, yes, there is a lot of apps on the App Store that you can download, and they will keep them entertained, and maybe they will even learn something. But on the other hand, you have teens and adults. For those also, you have some language learning marketplaces. You have some online schools that are catering to adults. So on left and right, yes, there's quite a, I would say, red ocean already, but right in the middle, there it was, a blue ocean for the taking.
Great. And that's where you're trying to sort of maximize the opportunity.
Yeah, that's where we plunged. That's where we took a plunge.
Great. Good idea, it sounds to me. How is it different to build something like this for children rather than adults? Not knowing much about this space, is the way that you design an app or a service like this vastly different when you target adults versus, sort of beyond preschool kids up until graduation?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely for kids, there is a lot of focus on motivation and keeping them interested in learning, because adults, they have a lot, I would say, a lot more self-control. They can actually make themselves to do certain things, right? Because they can plan for long term. Some of us, the best of us. But kids, they can't do it. For them, there's no long-term planning. They live in today, and they need to be motivated today in order to learn. So that's the big challenge. And as a result, you need to have different teachers for kids who are focused more on engaging with the student, not just giving them the formal material. You need to have a lot more games within your curriculum. And actually, if you look at this at the extreme, as I mentioned, for preteens, for like really small kids, essentially the apps look like games, right? So essentially, that's what they look like. And in our case, the challenge really is to create a mix between the two, right? Because just the simple learning games is not already interesting enough for the older kids. They get bored. But just having a live teacher is not, I would say, it's too expensive. right? Because you can't just have a live teacher, for example, every single day. I mean, you can, but it's going to be pretty expensive for the parents. So what you need to create is a mix between learning with the live tutor combined with offline, well, with outside of classroom content that kids will really engage on their own. And really kind of our vision is to create a system where kids will spend about 70% time with our content and about 30% of the time with the teacher.
Great. So it sounds to me that there is some similarities with the typical two-sided marketplaces, where essentially you have to both get the right type of teachers and tutors, and you also have to get the children, of course, as users. So it's sort of a dual go-to-market strategy. And how does that look like from the inside? Is it difficult to build both at the same time?
It's actually quite different from the marketplace because we have a lot higher tutor efficiency. So if on your average marketplace, you would probably have somewhere between 5 to 10 students per tutor. We actually have about 25 to 30. So basically, which means that we can serve the same number of students with a lot less tutors. And that also means we can invest a lot more into vetting those tutors, selecting them, and making sure that the quality is high. So from that perspective, it's different. And the big difference from between the marketplace and the school, we do a lot of vetting of our teachers before they can join the platform. And we do teacher development after they join the platform. So as a result, hopefully you get a better product, so to speak.
Yeah. And what about children? How do you, recruit them as users? Typically you would go through the parents, but how does it work in practice?
Yes, definitely we go through the parents. So all the marketing is targeted at the parents. They make the decision to make the to try the product, and we give a free trial lesson for the parent, and they just basically at that point they just bring the kid in front of the computer, and hopefully the kid loves it, and most of them do. And then you just subscribe and off to the races.
Fantastic. You talked earlier about the need to keep children engaged and sort of incentivized and motivated. Mm-hmm. That means gamification to me, at least to a degree. How important is that for you as a business?
Very important. Very important. I think for us, it's the way we look at the whole curriculum is essentially a game. Like a big game. And if some of you are familiar with game design, you have different layers of game. You have a meta game, you have gaming mechanics, and we do all that. So for us, essentially, we look at our curriculum now as a game design experience rather than as a kind of classical, curriculum writing exercise. And we look at the metrics in the same way. So basically, we don't just write some curriculum and just put it in there because we think it's good. We actually measure how well the students are engaging with it, and if the engagement is bad, we just kill it, and we do something else. So it's a very metrics-driven, very agile approach to curriculum design.
Are there any downsides or limitations to the use of gamification for these purposes?
I would say the biggest downside is that it's extremely expensive because creating games is just expensive in general. A lot of things go into designing a game. You need to make a lot of iterations before you actually get things right. So this is kind of the biggest challenge. But I think the benefits are just equally important as the cost. So before you go down this road, just make sure you're ready for it in terms of financing, in terms of time, in terms of your team. Do you have the right talent on your team to actually pull this off? Because I would argue that just doing kind of a little bit of gamification may not be quite sufficient, let's put it this way, in our day and time.
Yeah. Okay, we made it 15 minutes through without mentioning the C word, and by that I mean COVID. But I'm still going to ask, it must have been an interesting year for you last year, because I've talked to so many of these ed tech companies, and also anything online entertainment or whatnot, that have gotten quite a boost from, of course, the lockdowns and the school situations. What was it like for you?
Definitely, there was a big boost in demand. So we grew about 700%. So basically 8x year over year, which was pretty crazy, and it was a bit challenging, both on kind of supply side, so finding enough teachers suddenly, and scaling the team. But I would say, besides the fact that the demand picked up significantly, one of the major benefit was that eventually, finally, VCs were ready to talk online and make decisions online, right? So you could actually have we actually closed our financing rounds without going for a single business trip, which is amazing in my point of view.
Yeah, it is. We'll get back to the funding rounds in a second, but I wanted to touch on something you said about scaling the team. And I was wondering if you had any, I know it's a bit of a cliche question, I'm sorry, but do you have any lessons to teach, aspiring entrepreneurs that may be in the audience about how to scale a team when you're growing really fast? And hopefully they'll have that problem someday.
Yeah, I think it's a good problem to have. So if you run into this problem, then congratulate yourself, for sure. I think it's there's really no single thing. You just try to hang on to it. You try to survive, and I think the biggest risk is hiring the wrong people and making too many trade-offs while you're hiring in terms of quality of the people that you hire. So sometimes you have to do what you have to do, but also at some point you kind of have to start looking at the quality very carefully of your team. Look at which part of your team needs maybe some leadership upgrade. Maybe you need to find some leaders from the outside who can bring experience into the company and kind of so to speak professionalize the team in general. So definitely need to keep an eye on that. But I would say also something that helps is hiring remote, hiring everywhere. That is definitely helpful because it just gives you access to a bigger talent pool.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that because correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think you already were sort of remote first or remote only even before the pandemic. You had a distributed workforce, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, correct.
And where are your offices? Where were your people in general located? Does it matter at all?
So it doesn't really matter to us, to be honest with you. We don't really track where people reside. So the only thing that matters for us is just compliance with just kind of compliance things, like because we're U.S. companies, we have certain kind of limitations as to which geographies we can work with. But other than that, we're happy to hire from anywhere. Assuming that they're willing to work on European time zones. Yeah. So I would say the time zone is the biggest restriction here.
Yeah, very difficult time zones.
Yeah, but we did have, so our CMO, for example, was working from Thailand for quite a while, and she was fine with that. So basically, just had to work a little bit late, kind of the time was shifted into late evening for her.
Yeah. So you mentioned raising money. You've collected 2 funding rounds, one about 4.5 million, if I'm not mistaken, and then a big one, 35 million earlier. Well, actually last month it was announced, so quite recently. All of those funding rounds were closed remotely, you said, online?
Yes.
Was that?
Yes.
Does that mean you were looking for funding before that, and it was just too hard to meet investors in person and get them over the line? Or was it just coincidental timing?
Of course, we had funding rounds before COVID, and yes, it's definitely a bigger hurdle because, just as with hiring, there's only so many business trips you can make, right? And just to give you an idea, for our round A, I think we approached probably about 50 VCs, 50. And I mean, there's no way in the world I would be able to do that if I had to go and visit every single of them and pitch them in person. That would be impossible. So definitely, online fundraising makes it a lot more efficient. And I would argue probably for both sides, because VCs, they can also make decisions faster. If they're not ready to take a plunge, they make decisions faster. And for the founders, it saves time as well.
Sure. One thing that I hear a lot about is when you raise funding, via Zoom, or you recruit people remotely, is that it levels the playing field, but it levels the playing field for everyone else as well, which means that it can get a little bit competitive when it comes to, still trying to reach investors and pitch them or recruit the right talent, of course. So how do you deal with that situation where essentially, everyone's hiring remotely these days for the best talent they can find? So.
Well, we just have to keep our salaries competitive. So we keep track of market trends, and we make sure that our employees are compensated at the market rates. I don't think there's anything you can do here. Just be competitive, right, and have a great company and get people. So one thing you could do and you should do is try to hire people who basically give a shit, right? Who are not just in it for money, but they're also looking for a great team and a great place to work. And usually that insulates you somewhat from the competition, right? Of course, that doesn't mean that you can pay somebody half the salary, but it does mean that if somebody comes along with like 10% plus offer, they're probably not going to just switch jobs right there and then. So definitely do hire people for their let's say non-monetary motivation as well.
Yeah, that's a tricky one, isn't it? Because I hear those words a lot, like our culture, and we want to be a great place to work. But of course, before you start working there, you don't really know unless you get referrals from people inside. But how do you manage to communicate that you have a culture worth having aside from the monetary aspects to potential people joining?
I think you should always just remember that interview is not just interview is a two-way street. During the interview, it's not just you interview the candidate and evaluate them, but also the candidate evaluates the company. So basically train your so whoever is doing interviews within the company, they should understand that. They should behave respectfully to the candidates. They should remember to promote the company, to highlight certain points that you think are important within the company, our value system, and then good things will happen. And of course, don't forget to manage your Glassdoor profiles to make sure you have good ratings there. That's also helpful because many people do look at that. So yeah, I think those are kind of the key components.
And how many people work at Novakid today?
About more than 300.
More than 300. Okay, and how do you actually manage to keep culture alive in this remote environment? Because it seems to me relatively easy to do when you still have to go in person to offices. It seems a lot more difficult to do sort of in an online environment. So how do you handle that?
I think it's actually it's not true. I think that it just forces you to be a little bit more conscious about what does the culture mean and what exactly are the things that the culture comprises, right? Because sometimes when everybody's in the same place, it's very easy to say, oh, we do have a culture, right? Because we're in the same place, so we're always together, so there must be some culture going on. So I think that it just emphasizes that you need to put in the work to actually promote the culture and formulate it. But also we take all the money that we would have spent on renting offices and put them into having great offsites. So every 6 months we try to have a great offsite where the whole company goes to some nice place and just enjoys themselves, communicates in person. having some working sessions as well. So I think that's really that really also helps us to kind of keep this live interaction component within the company as well.
Great. So let's get back to Novakid, the product and service. Now that you've just closed your Series B round, what can we expect from you in terms of new products, new features in the near future?
As I mentioned, this kind of game design approach to curriculum. So basically, we are continuing down this road, and we're going to be investing a lot into new and exciting content for Novakid students. So basically, when they come to our platform, they will be able to choose from a number of kind of learning themes or storylines that they would like to engage with. Yeah, it's just going to be awesome content. That's what we're after.
Great. And then the obvious question, do you think you'll add more languages down the line as well? English, of course, one of the biggest and most important languages on the world, but hardly the only one. So do you have any plans to add languages?
We don't have immediate plans, but I think it eventually will happen because there's a significant portion of Spanish learners. And yeah, we'll be evaluating the markets and making decisions based on that. So for the moment, English is definitely, the focus. That's kind of one of the things you have to do as a startup. Focus on something. Yeah. Don't try to go to different places too fast.
Yeah. And maybe on that note, this is what my panel is about tomorrow, about market expansion. If you want to sort of move internationally, how do you evaluate where you spend your marketing, and does that change over time?
It does change over time, and I think really the best way to do it is to just do market tests and see what works, and double down on markets that work and kind of abandon the ones that don't work. You can do all the market research you want in the world, but very often the data is not reliable. So we find that doing market tests is the best way. So go in, find some digital influencers in the market, ask them to talk about your product, see what kind of customers you get, what kind of conversion rates you get. Go to Facebook, buy some advertising, spend some test budget there, see what happens. So this way we, I would say usually probably about like 50% of the markets we test don't work out. But we don't sweat about it. Just pick the ones that do work out and double down on them.
I guess not doing them is a lot worse than doing only.
Well, yeah, and sometimes actually it's temporary. So, for example, during the early test, Germany completely did not work for us. I mean, it was almost complete lack of interest. And then when we came back to it the next year, it was a whole lot better. And now Germany is one of our biggest markets. So you do have to kind of, refresh your market tests once in a while, because sometimes timing is also important.
Great. Bit of a question outside Novakid, but do you keep track of sort of the general trends in the startup ecosystem, and in particular in Europe and the CEE region?
Like in general, in super general, probably not. Like spending all of my time at Novakid. Definitely keeping track of the kind of edtech trends and kind of the companies that are adjacent to us. So very excited about the amount of attention that the edtech receives from the investor community. I think it's great. This will help all of us to build, exciting products for the consumers in the future. So I would say probably the biggest trend that I see is that edtech is definitely a good place to try and build some new stories in. And there's a lot of niches that are still underserved, unexplored, or with poor products. So, go in there and try to improve it, make it work better.
Would you mind elaborating on this a little more? And by the way, in the audience, feel free to ask questions. We have about 10 minutes left, so I'll be happy to take some Q&A as well. But on what you just said, if you were on the investment side, what are some of the gaps in the market right now that you see a lot of opportunity for emerging edtech startups to really, make a dent?
I think definitely the unsolved problem is technology enablement for public schools. It's a hard one for sure, because B2G is always a difficult kind of business model. But it's definitely, there's a sore need for kind of flexible yet powerful technology enabler for public schools to make them accessible online, to digitize them. In most of the places, it's still far away from the ideal. And there's definitely a lot of solutions that are trying to go kind of adjacent, so they offer kind of like math learning outside of school, so on and so forth. But I think improving public schools, that's also a big task that is yet to be solved.
Maybe on a slightly related note, but you haven't always been in the edtech space. So when you entered, what is some of the things you learned that really surprised you, that you didn't know sort of from the outside, that you learned when you started Novakid?
Maybe that about 90% of decisions for purchase is made by women. So that was a little unexpected. I was hoping that fathers would actually be more involved in the process, but there you go. So yeah, definitely all the fathers out there. Be more proactive.
I would hope these are joint decisions, but then the mom sort of makes the final decision, or the purchase itself.
I hope so too, but yes. So we have definitely most of our customers who actually make the actual purchase are women. So this was a bit surprising. Yeah, it was a bit surprising for me, for sure.
That's an incredibly surprising statistic to me. Anything else you learned that you think is worth noting?
Probably, quite a few things, but let's leave it at that for now.
Yeah. And what about scaling companies? Because it's growing to 300 people is not for everyone. But of course, when you set out to build a company of that size, you don't necessarily know the challenges that come with reaching 100, 200, etc. So what are some of the things that hopefully people in the audience will scale their companies to that size at some point? What are some of the things that you needed to learn or improve your skills to really be able to manage that?
Yes, as I said, I think one of the important things is moving from kind of hands-on to delegation, and to really understand the importance of hiring decisions that you make as a leader, right? Because yes, you can do lots of things by yourself, or you can kind of micromanage people, but ultimately, if you don't hire the right leaders who will actually in their turn hire great people that work for them, this whole system implodes, right? So very often, so I would say one of the big tasks for the CEO and for any kind of founder within the company is just to keep up with your professional growth with company growth, because basically within the span of 3 years, I had to grow from a CEO of a company with like 10 people to a CEO of a company with 300 people, and those are very different jobs. So there's a very real danger of not keeping up. So, and if you don't keep up, then you have to hire another CEO who will keep up. So definitely one of the challenges is keep growing professionally, and don't forget to ask for help, for mentorship from your board members, from your investors. Be frank with them, because it's a challenge that many of us go through.
Yeah. Maybe on that note, for investors and mentors, any advice you can share on how to best communicate with board members, investors, honestly, of course, but also maybe some tips and tricks on the actual process to make things as smooth as possible?
I think being honest and open is the best approach. try to make it regular. We try to make at least once a quarter for a board meeting. We also have regular sync-ups with our lead investors. But at the same time, of course, you don't want them to go too deeply into day-to-day operations. So that's a bit of a balancing act that you need to play. And I'm still figuring it out. So, at which point, what is the point that I become uncomfortable with investors becoming too involved? So still figuring that out.
Yeah. But do you feel any pressure at all, either hard or soft pressure from investors to sort of monetize more quickly than you would like to, or do things in terms of marketing and sales that you don't feel necessarily, or is the right time for it?
I think it's okay for them to have their vision and for what needs to be done, but it's also important for the founding team to have your own conviction. And if you believe the priorities should be elsewhere, go back to the openness tip, right? Just say, what, I think we should do something else, and this is what we're going to do. But thank you for your advice, because ultimately it's your company. You're the majority shareholder, and you should make a call.
Yeah. As much as they have writing on this, you always have a lot more.
Yes. I mean, you're investing your life in this, right? Yes, they invest money, but you invest your life. You have only one life that you live, right? So think about it from this perspective.
True that. A bit of a devil's advocate question to end on, because I can see that there's no Q&A yet, unless I'm looking in the wrong place. If anyone has a question, now would be the time. This is a bit of a tricky one, but what would have to happen for Novakid to fail entirely?
To fail entirely? Good question. Yeah, I think a lot of things can happen. We can have some black swans swooping in, God forbid, of course. We could have dramatic regulatory shifts happening. Really, there's just so many things. I think that's one of the thing as a founder is just don't think about that. Look at the path of success. Don't think too much about what things can kill you, because guess what? There's so many of those things, and you can't really predict all of them. Some of them, and on the bright side, whatever doesn't kill you will make you stronger. So.
Great.
So that's the way I try to look at it.
I can see Mary has joined us again.
Yeah, I just wanted to let you know there are a few questions that trickled in here on the stage Q&A. I don't know if you can see that.
I was looking at event Q&A. I'm really sorry.
Yeah, there's 2 Q&As, but we've tried to get everybody to use the stage Q&A. So yeah, you can. I think you guys covered a lot of these actually already during the course of the conversation, but maybe that last one, I thought that was a good one. Mm-hmm. So I'll let you guys wrap up.
The last one means the top one, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about trilingualism or more? What are your thoughts on this? Is it too much or even better to know 3 languages very well?
To be honest, I don't really have a whole lot of experience with this because, as I said, I really, don't see a problem. I mean, if it serves a purpose, I don't think it makes sense to kind of do it just for the sake of it. If it serves a purpose, then why not? If you live in an area where you expect that your kid will need three or more languages, then go for it. But just doing it just kind of to say, oh, my kid is trilingual and mine is 4lingual, because we do have a limited number of brain cells at the end of the day, and limited time, and learning a language is time consuming, even for kids. Even though they have lots of time on their hands, it is also limited. It also takes away from some of the things they might have learned. So I would find a good kind of compromise. I would not be chasing the number of languages. I think what's important is to have at least 2 languages, so that you have this kind of psychological barrier removed that says, hey, I can actually speak multiple languages, and this is this is how it happens. I know how to switch between languages in my head, right? So at that point, adding third one, maybe when they're older, will become a little bit easier. So that's kind of the way I look at it, but obviously it's not scientifically checked or anything. So yeah.
You're right, and just to chip in my 2 cents, because I come from Belgium, where we have 3 official languages in the country in the first place. So a lot of people in Belgium speak 3 to 5 languages sort of automatically. But I would say that it's never bad to learn another language on top, because it usually also provides a foundation to learn different languages that are related to this one more easily, or at least understand the basics of it, or be able to read and write. So that helps
if it's related. They're related languages, especially. Yes, makes perfect sense.
I think I can squeeze in one more question. Nobody's going to stop me anyway. For Miklos, what differentiates the sales? Well, no, that was for the previous one. I'm really sorry. But why is gamification expensive? I actually wanted to touch on that earlier as well, because you mentioned that it's expensive, but I also didn't really get why.
Well, games usually require original content. So you have to create a lot of artwork, animations. You have to experiment with different game mechanics and see how they work. It's just a long process that takes time. And if you need to integrate learning into this, that makes it even more challenging. So that's probably the main reason why it's expensive, not just in money, but also it's time consuming. It's, you have to have a big team. You need to have game designers, you need to have developers, you need to have artists, and this and that. So it's both time and money. And the higher quality that you're shooting for, it kind of grows pretty geometrical, right? So if you want to, next step in quality, you have to increase your budgets like 5x, 10x, and so on and so forth. This is why we have this, $100 million production value games in the market, because, it's not just because they're super complex, but because they have this very high quality bar.
Yeah, great. That's a great note to end on, I think. I thought it was very, very valuable as far as I'm concerned. I hope the audience agrees. Mary, anything else to say or ask?
No, thank you. I think, I agreed. Thank you, Robin. Great job guiding the discussion. And Max, there's a couple other questions. After we wrap up here, if you have a few minutes to stick around, you should be able to answer them right there. So I think the last one, the previous speaker has a reply to that question, but the top 5, I think, are for you. So thank you so much. That was great. Thanks, gentlemen. Lots of useful lessons here, and good luck to you, Max, as you continue on your unicorn journey with Novakid.
Same for me.
Oh, no, decacorn, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, right. Unicorns are old. They're out.
Yeah, exactly.
And I hope to meet both of you and the members of the audience in person hopefully next year.
Yes, absolutely. Take care, Max.
Have a great event, everyone.
Enjoy your event tomorrow, Robin, and thanks for joining us today.
Goodbye.
All right, thank you.